Good morning, Colonel Bye.
It's Thursday, September 30th.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Navia.
And here are your morning announcements. All college and university visits are virtual this year. Please see the college and university virtual information sessions document for dates and times. You can find the link to the document on the Colonel Bye website under guidance. Students will have to access the meeting through their own devices, and all sessions will take place from 12 to 12:45 p.m.
Math Club is starting soon. They'll be meeting on Tuesdays at 4:45 p.m. starting October 5th. Math Club will cover both math contest prep and curriculum-based material. They're also looking for 1 or 2 members from grades 9 to 11 to join the exec team. If you're interested in becoming a member or an exec, please visit the links below.
Do you enjoy writing, art, media, or creating things? Would you like the chance to win $1,000? Then enter this year's Student Achievement Awards competition. If you would like to compete, you must get your submission in to Mr. Park by November 5th.
Mock Trial Club is having its first meeting of the year on Wednesday, October 6th at 5 p.m. They're a club dedicated to legal knowledge and courthouse experience, coached by a real lawyer who takes you through the entire legal process. All practice leads up to the mock trial tournament at the Ottawa Courthouse.
All this week, CB students and families will be able to donate to the Fall Food Drive via School Cash Online, the same OCDSB system used for paying for school field trips, fees, and other costs. When you log into School Cash Online, you will see the option for your donation.
There will be a C-Flats interest meeting on Monday, October 4th at lunch through Google Meet. Students are to email Mr. Crossett directly for the meeting link.
Today, September 30th, we recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We are here to commemorate the Indigenous community and remember the atrocities inflicted by the Canadian government.
Remember that this is a somber occasion where we grieve the many losses and recognize the ongoing pain of survivors and their families.
We ask that you please be respectful and pay attention to the following assembly.
I don't know what I'd have been like if I would not have gone through that system. I know I would have had some kind of an education. I got no education at all. I can't read or write.
I didn't want to be an Indian. I didn't know who the hell I wanted to be. I wasn't accepted by the white man. I wasn't accepted by my own people in my reserve.
The residential school system took away my language, my culture, and my identity.
My name is Raymond Mason. I'm 62 years old, and I attended residential school for 12 years.
I'm Madeline Dion Stout. I'm 62 years old. I'm from the Kihiwan First Nation in Alberta. I attended Blue Quills Residential School for 36 consecutive months. That would be 3 years.
My name is Alice Little Deer. I'm 78 years old. I spent about 8 years in residential school.
I remember them taking me away from my mother and my stepfather. And I can hear them telling my mom that that was the best thing for me.
Our parents didn't want to worry us unduly and tell us and warn us that we are going to be separated for a long, long time with barely a visit.
I see him come around, Indian agent in a boat, with the principal, then collect some children from the reserve. Mm-hmm. Then he would come back again, come and take some more.
That's where a lot of my whole life really started to change, because I got strapped. I got beaten up for speaking my own native tongue. I even had my tongue pulled out and pinched,
My strongest memory there is when the little girl died beside me. She must have been about 6.
Indian children in the residential schools die at a much higher rate than in their villages. But this does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem. Duncan Campbell Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Indian Affairs. In order to educate the children properly, we must separate them from their families. Some people may say that this is hard, but if we want to civilize them, we must do that. a federal cabinet minister, 1883.
Wade Huedep, Phyllis Webstadren Squest, Strachum Chatstam Stlakwan. I'm speaking to you today from Shawetmch Ulach, the land of the Shuswap people in Williams Lake, BC. I am third-generation Indian residential school survivor. My grandmother attended for 10 years from 1925 to 1935. All of Granny's 10 children, including my mother, attended for 10 years from 1954 to 1964. I attended residential school in 1973-74. We all attended the St. Joseph Mission Indian Residential School, simply called the Mission, located just minutes from Williams Lake. My son also attended the last operating residential school in Canada when it closed in Saskatchewan in 1996. To tell my story, I was living with my granny as a child, and when I turned 6 in July of 1973, Granny took me to town to buy me something new to wear for my first day of residential school. I chose a shiny new shirt. It was bright and exciting, just how I felt to be going to school for the first time. When I arrived at the Mission, my shiny new shirt was taken away. No matter how much I cried and wanted it back, no one would listen. I never wore my shirt again. Thoughts of home and Granny's garden, fishing for salmon on the Fraser River, are all memories that helped me through that year at residential school. Although the Mission remained open until 1981, I never returned. I was able to attend a one-room schoolhouse just minutes from Granny's house in Dog Creek. The memories of that orange shirt being taken away and the lack of caring by those who controlled us kept me from wearing orange for a long time in my life, as the sight of orange would trigger memories of my experiences and the effects of my life from attendance at that school. I told my orange shirt story for the first time in April 2013, when preparation for when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came to Williams Lake. Those involved with the event decided to honor the orange shirt as a symbol of the effects of residential schools and the need for Every Child Matters. Originally, Orange Shirt Day was focused on the Caribou-Chilcotin region, but thanks to social media, it continues to grow and have a life of its own, and has grown into what it is today.
I was 6 years old when they took me to a residential school. I remember the day walking toward that school with my mother, and it was a silent walk, and I was so afraid. 20 or 30 little kids herded into the showers, and then your body being painted in white liquid of some kind, your hair cropped and then doused in kerosene. And that was pretty traumatizing. The school held roughly 220 people, half boys, half girls, and we were segregated. If I was caught waving at my sister, there'd be a punishment for it. And so as a result of that segregation, I never really learned any social skills that young people should be learning as they grow up. From a religious and spiritual perspective, of course, the churches lobbied hard to convert Indigenous people, Aboriginal people. They said that we were heathen and pagan. They targeted language in those things we had learned through all of millennia to know where we came from, to know who we were, as something that had to be eliminated. Before that time, I lived in a place called Guayastams. They call it Guilford Island now. We harvested from the forest all of the animals that we needed to provide us sustenance. And from the ocean in front of us as well, all of the species of whales and mink and fish. And I had a connection to the environment around us. And so after having spent years in those schools, by the time we were ready to leave, most of us were pretty broken. Many of us, including myself, descended into addictions, alcoholism, and violence, and it was pretty difficult. Those schools lasted for over 100 years. There were over 150,000 little children. And the last school that closed in Canada was in 1996 in Saskatchewan. There was a history on this land that had been absolutely ignored. Nobody knew about the residential school legacy. Nobody knew about the intent of the Indian Act, the chronic challenges now facing Aboriginals. And we're starting to accept the idea that we have the shared history for which we all are responsible for. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was submitted, I was in the room when Justice Murray Sinclair, the chair of the commission, denounced Canada. He had just recited a litany of intensive harms against Aboriginal people. And when he said, Canada, you have committed cultural genocide, there was just a silence in that room, and then all of a sudden it erupted in euphoria. We said, survivors want an apology from the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. And I was there and I heard the words, I'm sorry, and then I couldn't see because my eyes were just flowing with tears. I was so happy that somebody had said, I'm sorry. Canada, by the way, is the only Western country that has had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we're trying to look through a new lens. We and Canadians, we as an Aboriginal, we celebrate each other, everybody cheering each other up as we move toward a more equal, prosperous future for all of us. My name is Chief Robert Joseph, and I believe that Truth and Reconciliation is Canada.
Well, it's a recognition of the tragedy that took place with so many young students that were killed and left to die in residential schools. And it's an opportunity for us to come to grips with the fact that, successive governments and generations of people turned a blind eye to really what is a national tragedy. And also a reminder that we have so much more to do in terms of reconciling our relationship with First Nations in our country as well as in our own backyard. We have the largest Inuit population outside of northern Canada lives right here in Ottawa. We have a strong First Nations community. We have good relations with the Algonquins, the Algonquin people. I have the two Algonquin flags that are in my boardroom that are also flown outside at City Hall as sign of respect that we are on unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Well, we'll continue to keep the flags flown at half-mast, and I'll be delivering a proclamation on Orange Shirt Day on the 30th. And I know the federal government's going to be involved in some activities as well. Well, I think, when there are powwows that take place, for instance, in the summer, to go and visit one of those powwows, to visit a First Nations community, to meet, if you have First Nations, Inuit, Métis, or Aboriginal members of your school, get to know them, befriend them, find out a little bit about their culture and about their history and their heritage and their language and their cuisine, their dance, and, just try to better understand the history of First Nations. A lot of sad and tragic aspects, but there are also a lot of positive aspects as well of how First Nations are engaged now more than ever before. And I think there are more Canadians understand, the history, both the good and the bad history of our treatment of Aboriginal members of our community.
Good morning, Colonel Bai. My name is Dorothy Stewart. I'm from the Cree Nation of Wemengee in northern Quebec. I am one of 9 siblings that went to residential school. So today I'm going to share some of the things that I think have brought me to where I am today. I also want you to know that Orange Day signifies a lot of things. For me, I will tell you, as a personal experience, I remember the day that my mother bathed me, washed my hair, and I had new clothes. I don't know where they got the money, but I had a new dress, new stockings, and new shoes. And when I arrived at the residential school, everything was I was taken away from me. I was bathed, and I really remember that the smell of the chlorine was so strong. Sometimes I still get a gist of that where I smell it and it brings back that memory. You know how they say your senses bring you back to someplace. Anyway, so Orange Day for me, I think is very important. And what can you students do in terms of trying to learn from this and also to put it as part of something to signify, to remember this day? One is for one to learn as much as you can what you want to question, what happened, but also to think of the families that were already, affected by the findings of many grave sites. So, and also the ones that never returned. So, as something that you can do is learn as much as you can, and to also be sensitive to the cultural appropriation of things and the way things are said. That is a part of understanding what one nation of people had experienced, not just in Canada, it's all over the world. In the United States, we know of many cases also. So what I say to this day, when you Colonel by students want to do something to signify this day, is to remember that the things that you want to learn. But I also know that this is somebody's culture that was taken away from them, and they were not allowed to practice. So, but today we can all learn together and also walk together. So in having said that, I would like to thank you all, and I hope that you all enjoy this day and learn as much as possible. And maybe Cameron and Darcy can arrange something that we can I can answer any questions that you might have. So I hope I've done this justice for to share what I've shared with you. Take care. Wajagumswa.
Kwe ani sego wache. Jody Alexander Nadishnikaz, Pikwak Nagan and Dunjaba. Hi everyone, I'm Jody Alexander. I'm an Algonquin from Pikwakanagan, and I'm also the Vice Principal for Indigenous Education with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. I think it's important for students to learn about Indigenous history because it is our shared history. It is actually Canadian history. We want to make sure that we include the perspectives of Indigenous folks. For many years, our Canadian story is told from the Eurocentric point of view. We talk about colonialism as a good thing. It wasn't a good thing for Indigenous folks. So I think that it really is important that we not only learn about that true history, but it's important that we learn about the contributions that Indigenous folks can make in all aspects of the curriculum. We had knowledge systems in place prior to Europeans coming to Canada. We had science, Indigenous science, we had Indigenous mathematics. And I think that it's important that we not only learn that history, but we also learn and value the knowledge that Indigenous folks can bring to our world. I also think that it's important that we learn year round about Indigenous perspectives, knowledge, and current issues. I think that this is really important, and it's not just focusing on learning in one day. I think that we should have perspectives in our classroom every day. I think we should read Indigenous authors. I think we should watch Indigenous films. We should listen to Indigenous podcasts, all of those things, so that we can see the true beauty and brilliance of Indigeneity and Indigenous people. We have many gifts, many talents, and it's really important that we know that as Canadians. Like I said, not only on one day of the year, but throughout the year.
Chantal Werner, Dishnikas, Ottawa, Donji, Ba, Canada, Donji. My name is Chantal Werner. I'm the instructional coach for Indigenous education with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. I'm Algonquin First Nations. My family is originally from Kitigan-Zibi and Maniwaki. I introduced myself to you in my language of Algonquin, which has been basically lost to my family due to residential school system and colonialization. And I'm finally able in a place to start learning it again and hopefully teaching my children. If you wanted more information, you can go to orangeshirtday.org, and that tells the story of where Orange Shirt Day started. If they go there, they can find out so much more information about her story. There's videos on there of her speaking and explaining the story and why it's important for people to learn about it. And hopefully for most people, it's the opening of a learning journey to find out more about what happened to Indigenous people throughout Canada. The school system, like especially our school board, the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, we are in a different position than most boards, where we are lucky and fortunate to have an Indigenous education team of 6 people who are all Indigenous, which normally doesn't happen, right? A lot of the people that I deal with from other school boards are all non-Indigenous working in the role. So you're getting firsthand people with the knowledge of our own culture. So it's not appropriating it in any way. And that's what we come in for staff and for educators, is to try and help them bring in the Indigenous perspective and the Indigenous way of learning into their classrooms on a regular basis. And that's why we say it's the beginning of a learning journey, right? The Ministry of Education has now changed documents, the curriculum, to include Indigenous perspective, include Indigenous history. When I went to high school, we won't say how long ago that was, right? I never learned about myself. Like, it was not a part of history. Whereas you are also fortunate now that in grade 10 history, you're actually learning history about Indigenous people within Canada, which is great. And that's a great start, and it starts at the elementary level with heritage and identity. And we understand that at an elementary level, to continue that learning on your own is hard because they're not really there yet. But at a secondary level, you're all bright enough and able to find out more information, research it, look up the 94 calls to action. If you actually looked up the 94 calls to action that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission put out there, how many of them are actually being done is very few. And why is that? Why is it that we have reserves within Canada that are still on boiled water advisories and can't drink their own water, right? And there's a large number. What changes need to be done? And as you get older and you start learning more about these things, that's where you get the opportunity, to vote in government who is going to help deal with these issues and help make sure that clean water is for everybody within Canada. The idea that it's not, we're not a third world country. So how come people don't have clean water, right? So it's just things to think about, and it's ways to open your minds and continue learning, and then try and do your best to understand the perspective and understand, what people have been through. Intergenerational trauma is a real thing, and they say that it takes 7 generations in order to forget the issues that have happened to cause that trauma. So, you know, if I look at it as my grandfather, his family went through residential school system, that affects his children, to affect me, to affect my children. How many more generations is it going to take before it's not affecting my children anymore? Right? So there's so much you can do, and knowledge is power, right? Learning about it, knowing about it, talking about it is such a great place to start.